The crystal glasses clinked as champagne flowed freely around the elegantly set dinner table. Maxwell's parents had spared no expense for this engagement dinner at Elio's, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. I smoothed the fabric of my burgundy dress, the most expensive piece of clothing I owned, and took a deep breath. 20 faces turned toward me, the outsider, as Maxwell's father raised his glass. "To Olivia and Maxwell," Richard Bennett announced, his voice carrying the distinctive cadence of old money. "May their union be as illustrious as their futures." I smiled nervously, acutely aware that I didn't belong in this world of Ivy League legacies and summer homes in the Hamptons. Maxwell squeezed my hand under the table, his thumb brushing over the 3-carat diamond he'd placed on my finger just 2 weeks ago. The ring felt heavy, foreign, just like this entire evening. "So, Olivia," Maxwell's mother, Eleanor, called from across the table, her voice sweet but her eyes sharp as flint. "Maxwell tells us you work at a community center, is it?" "Yes," I replied, straightening my posture. "I'm the program director at the East Harlem Youth Development Center. We provide educational support and mentoring for underserved teens." Eleanor's smile tightened. "How charitable of you." Maxwell's cousin Vivian leaned forward, her designer earrings catching the light. "And where did you study, Olivia?" I don't believe Maxwell mentioned it. The table quieted. I felt heat rising to my cheeks. "I didn't complete college," I admitted. "I started at CUNY, but had to drop out after my sophomore year when my mother got sick." "I was working 3 jobs to keep us afloat." A delicate silence fell across the table. I saw glances exchanged, eyebrows raised. "Olivia is brilliant," Maxwell interjected quickly. "She's entirely self-taught. She runs that entire center practically single-handedly." "Self-taught," repeated Richard, swirling his wine thoughtfully. "There's something to be said for practical experience, I suppose." I felt Maxwell tense beside me. "Actually," he said, his voice louder than necessary, "I think formal education is absolutely essential for any position of real influence. You can't possibly understand complex sociological factors affecting urban youth without proper academic training." I turned to look at him, surprised. This didn't sound like the Maxwell who had spent hours listening to my ideas about community programming, who had called my approaches revolutionary. "Don't you agree, Olivia?" he asked, but his tone suggested there was only one correct answer. "I think there's value in both approaches," I said carefully. "Education is important, but—" "Come now," Maxwell laughed, cutting me off. He turned to his family. "Olivia doesn't really grasp the importance of academic rigor. She thinks her instincts are equivalent to my doctoral research." The table erupted in polite laughter. I sat frozen, the blood draining from my face. "Not everyone has your gifts, darling," Eleanor said indulgently. "Dr. Bennett has such a nice ring to it, doesn't it, Olivia?" "Or should we say, the future Dr. and Mrs. Bennett," added Richard. "Though only one with the credentials," quipped Maxwell's brother Adrian. More laughter. Maxwell raised his glass again. "To education," he toasted, not meeting my eyes. "The foundation of everything worthwhile." As everyone drank, I stared at my plate, fighting back tears. The man beside me, the man I had agreed to marry, was a stranger. 3 days after the disastrous dinner, I still couldn't shake Maxwell's words from my mind. I moved mechanically around our apartment. A spacious Upper West Side 2-bedroom that belonged to Maxwell, but had become ours 8 months ago when I moved in. I stood at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner when the front door opened. Maxwell strode in, briefcase in hand, his tailored suit as immaculate as when he'd left that morning. "Something smells good," he said, approaching to kiss my cheek. I turned my face away slightly. "Just making stir-fry." Maxwell paused, then set his briefcase on the counter and loosened his tie. "You're still upset about dinner." It wasn't a question. I kept chopping, the knife hitting the cutting board with more force than necessary. They were just joking around. "Liv," he said, his voice taking on that slightly condescending tone I'd been noticing more frequently lately. You're being oversensitive. I set the knife down. You humiliated me. I did no such thing. He poured himself a glass of water. I simply stated facts. Education matters. My family values it. And frankly, you've always been a bit defensive about not finishing college. I've never been defensive, I argued. I've always been honest about my circumstances. And until that dinner, I thought you respected my path. Maxwell sighed theatrically. Of course I respect you, Olivia. But let's be realistic. My PhD and research experience give me insights you simply don't have. It's not your fault. I stared at him, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time. This wasn't just about one uncomfortable dinner. This was a fundamental aspect of how he saw me, as lesser. You've never spoken to me like this before, I said quietly. Like what? Honestly? He loosened his tie further. Maybe it's time we have some honest conversations before the wedding. My family has concerns about your background. My background. The words felt like acid on my tongue. Your lack of education, your family situation, the financial disparities. These things matter in the long run, Olivia. I put down the knife I'd been holding, afraid I might throw it. They never seemed to matter before you put this ring on my finger. That's not fair, Maxwell said, his voice hardening. I've always been supportive. I encouraged you to go back to school, didn't I? As a way to fix me. Not because you believed in my abilities. Maxwell rolled his eyes. Now you're being dramatic. This is exactly why these conversations are difficult to have with you. I felt something shift inside me. A seed of doubt that had been planted at the dinner now taking root. You know what? I said. I'm going to stay at Zoe's tonight. I need some space. Olivia, don't be ridiculous. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being self-respecting. I put the vegetables away and grabbed my purse. Fine, Maxwell said coldly. Take your emotional time out. When you're ready to have an adult conversation, let me know. I paused at the door. You know what the strangest part is, Maxwell? I never once felt uneducated or insufficient until you decided to tell me I was. As I closed the door behind me, I realized my hands were shaking. I'd left the 3-carat diamond on the kitchen counter. He said, "What?" Zoe exclaimed, pouring more wine into my glass. We were sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, takeout containers spread between us. Zoe had been my best friend since we were 12, growing up in the same Queens neighborhood, sharing dreams and secrets through the years. Unlike me, she'd finished college, worked her way through NYU, and was now an elementary school art teacher. He basically told his entire family that I'm intellectually inferior, I said. The hurt still raw 3 days later. Then when I confronted him, he said his family has concerns about my background. Zoe's face darkened. After 2 years together, now they have concerns? Right after you got engaged? That's convenient, I sipped my wine. I just don't understand. Maxwell never seemed to care about my education before. He used to say he admired how I'd overcome obstacles, how I was making a real difference in kids' lives. Maybe his family got to him, Zoe suggested. Or maybe... What? Zoe hesitated. Maybe this is who he's always been, and he just hid it well. The thought had been haunting me too. Had I been so in love that I'd missed signs of Maxwell's elitism? I don't know what to do, I admitted. I left the ring at the apartment. Good, Zoe said firmly. You need time to think clearly. Have you looked at his PhD stuff before? What do you mean? I mean, he's always going on about being Dr. Bennett and his groundbreaking research. But have you ever actually read his dissertation or seen his credentials? I frowned. I've seen his diploma in his office. And he has that book he published. Self-published, Zoe corrected. Remember? He mentioned paying for publication at that dinner party last year. Something uncomfortable stirred in my memory. Maxwell had indeed mentioned investing in his publication, but had quickly changed the subject when someone asked for details. You're not suggesting? Zoe shrugged. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying, for someone who lords his education over others, he's surprisingly vague about the details. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Zoe asked, looking up Atlantic International University. Zoe moved to sit beside me, looking over my shoulder as I typed. The website that loaded looked professional enough, featuring smiling diverse students and claims of accreditation. See? It's real, I said, feeling strangely disappointed. Wait, Zoe said, pointing to the screen. Click on that accreditation link. I did. The page listed several official-sounding organizations I'd never heard of. Google one of those, Zoe suggested. I typed Global Accreditation Alliance for Higher Education into the search bar. The results made my stomach drop. Recognized diploma mill accreditor, I read aloud from a watchdog website. Issues fake accreditation to unregulated online universities. We spent the next 2 hours diving deeper. Atlantic International University was indeed real, but it was what educators called a diploma mill. It had no recognized accreditation, no physical campus, and minimal academic requirements. Students primarily earned degrees based on life experience and by paying substantial fees. So Maxwell's prestigious PhD, Zoe began, is essentially bought and paid for, I finished. A strange calm settling over me. His entire academic identity is a fraud. Holy shit, Liv! I leaned back against the couch, my mind racing. No wonder he never invited me to his graduation, or introduced me to classmates. There weren't any. What are you going to do? I stared at the ceiling, feeling an odd clarity cutting through my hurt and confusion. I'm going to do some more research. I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. And then, I said slowly, Dr. Bennett is going to get a lesson in honesty. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began my investigation in earnest. Maxwell would be at his consulting firm all day, giving me time to search our apartment, his apartment, for evidence. I started in his home office, a space I'd always respected as his private domain. The walnut desk dominated the room, with a large framed diploma hanging prominently on the wall behind it. Atlantic International University, it proclaimed in ornate script, certifying that Maxwell Richard Bennett has been conferred the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Organizational Psychology. I carefully removed the frame from the wall and examined it closely. The diploma looked impressive, with gold seals and signatures. But now that I was scrutinizing it, I noticed there was no specific date, just the year 2017. No signatures from specific department heads, just vague titles. I replaced the diploma and turned to his bookshelves. There sat the self-published book he was so proud of, Transformative Leadership Paradigms in Modern Organizations by Dr. Maxwell R. Bennett, Ph.D. I flipped through it, noting how the text was filled with jargon and circular arguments that I'd once mistaken for academic brilliance simply because I couldn't understand it. Next, I moved to his filing cabinet. The top drawer was locked, but I knew Maxwell kept spare keys in an old cigar box. Inside the drawer, I found folders meticulously labeled by year. I pulled out AIU 2015-2017 and began reading. What I discovered confirmed everything. Receipts showing payments of over $30,000 to Atlantic International University. A credit evaluation form giving Maxwell dozens of credits for life experience and professional achievements. Correspondence showing he'd completed his entire doctoral program in just 18 months, primarily through independent study, and a dissertation that had undergone virtually no review process. I found the dissertation itself, a bound copy with a professional-looking cover. But reading through it, I recognized entire passages that seemed suspiciously polished compared to Maxwell's normal writing. I photographed several pages, then used my phone to search for the text online. Sure enough, significant portions had been lifted from other sources with minor modifications. Not just plagiarized, lazily plagiarized. As I continued searching, I uncovered more disturbing details. Maxwell had created an entirely fictional academic background for himself. Before working at his current consulting firm, he'd claimed to have held a research position at Cornell University, but the documentation I found showed he'd simply paid for access to their online library as an external scholar, a program available to anyone for a fee. His undergraduate degree, at least, was legitimate, from a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. But he'd transformed this modest beginning into an illustrious academic career through careful misrepresentation and outright lies. The most painful discovery came last. In a folder marked personal, I found a prenuptial agreement his lawyer had drafted, which he hadn't yet shown me. It included clauses about intellectual property that would prevent me from ever publicly contradicting Maxwell's professional claims or academic credentials after marriage. He knew exactly what he was doing. I carefully photographed everything, then returned the documents to their places. As I closed the filing cabinet, I felt a strange calm replace my initial shock. This wasn't just about Maxwell's lies to me. It was about a systematic fraud he'd perpetrated on everyone, including his employers and clients. I texted Zoe, "Need to see you tonight. I found everything." Then I called my friend Jason, who worked as an investigative journalist. This story needed more than just my accusations. It needed proper documentation from someone who knew how to verify academic credentials. "Jason," I said when he answered, "I need your help with something sensitive. How much do you know about diploma mills?" 3 days later, I sat in a corner booth at a quiet cafe 6 blocks from our apartment, papers spread across the table. Across from me sat Jason, his journalist's notebook open, and Zoe, who had insisted on coming for moral support. "So your fiancé's entire academic identity is fraudulent," Jason summarized, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. "And he's leveraged this fake PhD to secure his consulting position, publish a book, and speak at industry conferences." I nodded, still feeling the surreal quality of it all. His firm's website lists him as Dr. Bennett, leading expert in organizational psychology with a PhD from AIU. They bill clients hundreds of dollars an hour based partly on his expertise, which technically doesn't exist, Zoe added. Jason tapped his pen thoughtfully. "I've verified everything you've brought me. Atlantic International University is indeed a known diploma mill. They have no recognized accreditation, no proper faculty, and minimal academic standards. Basically, you pay for the degree and do some token work." "And the plagiarism in his dissertation?" I asked. "Clear cut," Jason confirmed. "I ran it through the same software we use at the paper. About 40% is directly lifted from other sources without proper attribution." I rubbed my temples. I still can't believe I never suspected anything. "Why would you?" Zoe placed her hand over mine. "You trusted him." Jason closed his notebook. "So what do you want to do with this information, Olivia? This could seriously damage his career if it became public." The question hung in the air. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Or just to move on? "I want him to face the consequences of his actions," I said finally. "But I want to be strategic about this. He humiliated me in front of his family for my lack of education while building his entire identity on a lie." "You could simply confront him privately," Jason suggested. "No," I said firmly. "This goes beyond our relationship. He's defrauding clients. He's speaking at conferences as an expert. He's perpetuating a fake identity professionally." "So what are you thinking?" Zoe asked. I took a deep breath. "His firm is hosting a major industry conference next week. Maxwell is the keynote speaker, talking about academic approaches to organizational leadership, ironically enough. It's going to be live-streamed to their clients worldwide." Jason raised his eyebrows. "You want to expose him publicly?" "Not exactly," I said. "I want to give him the chance to expose himself." "To come clean on his own terms? And if he doesn't?" Zoe asked. "Then I'll have no choice but to share what I know with his firm and, if necessary, with your newspaper, Jason." I straightened the papers in front of me. "But first, I'm going to return to the apartment tonight and confront him privately. He deserves that much." "Are you sure that's safe?" Zoe asked, concern etching her face. "Maxwell isn't violent," I said. "Just arrogant and dishonest." "Still," Jason said, "I don't like the idea of you confronting him alone." "I won't be recording the conversation," I assured him. "This part is personal. Between him and me, I just want to see if there's anything left of the man I thought I knew." "And if there isn't?" Zoe pressed. I closed my folder of evidence. "Then Dr. Bennett will have a very interesting keynote speech to give next week." I unlocked the door to the apartment at precisely 7:15 p.m., knowing Maxwell would be home from work by now. The familiar scent of his expensive cologne hung in the air, mixed with the aroma of cooking food. "Olivia?" His voice called from the kitchen. "Is that you?" I steeled myself and walked through the living room to find him stirring something on the stove, sleeves rolled up, a dish towel over his shoulder. He looked up and smiled cautiously. "I made your favorite pasta," he said. "I thought we could talk." I set my bag down on the counter, noting the open bottle of wine and 2 glasses already poured. "We definitely need to talk." Relief washed over his face. "I've missed you. These past few days have given me time to reflect. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." "Which way, Maxwell?" "The way you spoke to me at dinner with your family, or the way you spoke to me afterward?" He sighed, turning off the stove. "Both. I was trying to impress my family and I took it too far. I'm sorry. In another time, I might have accepted this apology. Might have been so grateful for his admission that I'd overlook the deeper issues. But not now. I've been doing some reflecting too," I said, not touching the wine he'd poured me. "About your academic credentials." His movements stilled almost imperceptibly, but his expression remained neutral. "My credentials? What about them?" "Atlantic International University," I said simply. "Tell me about it." Maxwell's face tightened slightly. "It's a progressive institution focused on non-traditional education models. We've discussed this before." "Have we? Because I don't recall ever hearing details about your doctoral program. Your professors? Your classmates? Your dissertation defense?" He set down the wooden spoon he was holding. "What exactly are you implying, Olivia?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking direct questions about the PhD you're so proud of, the one that apparently makes you intellectually superior to me." "This is ridiculous," he scoffed, but I noticed a slight tremor in his hand as he reached for his wine glass. "If you've come back just to pick a fight. AIU is a diploma mill, Maxwell," I cut in. "It has no recognized accreditation. No academic standing. No rigorous standards. You bought a degree." His face flushed. "That's an outrageous accusation." "Is it? Because I've done my research. Real research, not the kind you claim to have done for your plagiarized dissertation." At the word plagiarized, his expression shifted from defensive to alarmed. "You went through my private papers," he said, voice low. "Yes, you had no right. Perhaps not, but I had reason. You've built your entire identity, personal and professional, on a lie." Maxwell abandoned all pretense of calm. "You don't understand how the world works, Olivia. Credentials open doors. My work is excellent regardless of how I obtained the title." "So you admit it? Your PhD is fraudulent?" He paced the kitchen. "It's not that simple. AIU has a different approach to higher education. More practical, less academic bureaucracy." "Maxwell," I said tiredly. "Stop. The university is listed on multiple watchdog sites as a known diploma mill. You paid for a degree and did minimal work. Your dissertation contains plagiarized material. These are facts." He stared at me for a long moment, calculation visible behind his eyes. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "What do you want from me, Olivia? Money? Is that it?" The question stung worse than any insult. "Is that who you think I am?" "I don't know who you are anymore," he shot back. "The woman I asked to marry me wouldn't have gone snooping through my private papers or threatened my career. And the man I agreed to marry wouldn't have built that career on lies or humiliated me for my honest educational background." I took a steadying breath. "I want you to come clean." "Come clean?" He laughed bitterly. "Destroy everything I've built? My reputation? My career?" "You have a choice," I said quietly. "You can admit the truth on your own terms, or it will come out anyway. But at least if you take responsibility, you might salvage some respect." "Are you threatening me?" His voice had turned cold. I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing. Next week at the conference, when you give your keynote speech, tell the truth. Admit that you don't have a legitimate PhD, that you've misrepresented your credentials. Maxwell's laugh was harsh. You've lost your mind if you think I'd do that. Then I'll have no choice but to share what I know with your firm, and possibly with the media. He stepped closer, his face hard. No one will believe you. It will be your word against mine, and I have the diploma on my wall. What do you have? Some photocopied papers you stole from my office? You'll look like a vindictive ex trying to ruin my reputation. I have more than that, Maxwell. I've had your credentials independently verified, or rather, disproven. I've documented the plagiarism in your dissertation. I have records of your payments to AIU. Something flickered in his eyes, the first hint of real fear. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice suddenly quiet. Is it revenge for what I said at dinner? I apologized for that. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. It's about integrity. I moved toward the door. You have until your keynote speech next week to decide what kind of man you really want to be. Olivia, wait. For a moment, he sounded like the Maxwell I thought I knew. We can work this out, together. I love you. I turned back to look at him. The sad thing is, I don't even know if that's true anymore. Was anything about you real? Before he could answer, I walked out, leaving the engagement ring still sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd left it days earlier. The week that followed my confrontation with Maxwell was a blur of anxiety and resolve. I moved the rest of my belongings out of the apartment while he was at work, leaving my key on the empty dresser. Maxwell called repeatedly, his messages shifting from contrite to threatening and back again. Please, Olivia, let's talk about this like adults, one voicemail pleaded. You're making a serious mistake that will hurt us both, warned another. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on building my case. Jason had connected me with an educational verification service that provided official documentation, confirming Atlantic International University's status as an unaccredited institution. I compiled evidence of Maxwell's professional claims, screenshots of his firm's website touting his doctoral research, and promotional materials for the upcoming conference featuring Dr. Maxwell Bennett, PhD. I also drafted a letter to the GQ partners at his consulting firm, detailing my findings but not sending it yet. That would be my last resort. 3 days before the conference, Maxwell showed up at the youth center where I worked. I was in the middle of a grant proposal meeting when my assistant interrupted to say my fiancé was insisting on seeing me. Ex-fiancé, I corrected automatically, then excused myself from the meeting. Maxwell stood in the reception area, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His normally impeccable suit was creased, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. 5 minutes, he said when he saw me. Please. I led him to a small meeting room and closed the door. What do you want, Maxwell? I want you to stop this vendetta. He ran a hand through his hair. I've spoken with a lawyer. What you're threatening could be considered blackmail. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm giving you the opportunity to tell the truth yourself. By threatening to expose me if I don't? He laughed harshly. That's the textbook definition of blackmail. No, it's accountability. And for the record, I haven't demanded anything from you, no money, no favors. Just honesty. He paced the small room. Do you have any idea what you're asking? I'd lose everything. My job, my reputation, my family's respect. You built everything on a lie, Maxwell. That was your choice. He stopped pacing and looked at me directly. What about your choice? You chose me. You accepted my proposal. You were ready to build a life with me. Did none of that mean anything? The question hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything, part of me still mourned the future I'd thought we would have. It meant everything, I said quietly. That's why your betrayal hurts so deeply. It's not just that you lied about your credentials. It's that you made me feel inferior for my honest educational background while hiding your dishonest one. Maxwell sat down heavily. I never meant to hurt you. Maybe not at first, but at that dinner, you deliberately humiliated me to elevate yourself, to impress your family. I panicked, he admitted. My father started asking questions about my research, topics I couldn't adequately address. I deflected by focusing on your background instead. The admission surprised me. So you threw me under the bus to protect your secret. He didn't deny it. Maxwell, I said, softening my tone slightly. This isn't just about us anymore. You're presenting yourself as an expert, advising companies based on credentials you don't have. There are real ethical implications here. I'm good at my job, he insisted. The degree is just a piece of paper. Then why did you need to fake it? He had no answer for that. The conference is in 3 days, I reminded him. Make the right choice. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. I did love you, Olivia. That part was real. I wanted to believe him, but the trust between us was shattered beyond repair. Goodbye, Maxwell. After he left, I returned to my grant meeting, but my mind was elsewhere. For the first time since discovering his fraud, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. Would exposing Maxwell really serve any purpose beyond revenge? Was I being self-righteous? That evening, I called Zoe. I'm having doubts, I admitted. About what? She asked. About exposing Maxwell. Maybe I should just walk away, let him live with his lies. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Let me ask you something. If you'd known the truth about his credentials when you first met him, would you still have respected him? Still have fallen in love with him? I considered this. No, I said finally. Not because of the lack of a degree, but because of the dishonesty. Exactly, she said. So you're not exposing him because he doesn't have a PhD. You're exposing him because he's living a lie and hurting people in the process, including you. Her words steadied me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And Maxwell still had the chance to embrace that truth himself. The day of the conference arrived with a sense of inevitability. Maxwell had not contacted me again after our meeting at the youth center, and I had no idea what choice he would make. The event was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. I sat in a cafe across the street, watching attendees in business attire stream into the building. Jason had secured me a press pass under the guise of covering the conference for a small industry publication, but I hadn't decided yet whether to use it. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Whatever happens today, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. I smiled faintly and put the phone away. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted to happen anymore. Part of me hoped Maxwell would choose integrity, would stand before his colleagues and admit his deception. Another part feared the public humiliation this would bring him, despite everything. At 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before Maxwell's scheduled keynote address, I made my decision. I crossed the street, press pass in hand, and entered the hotel. The conference was being held in the grand ballroom, already filled with several hundred professionals. I slipped into a seat in the back row, just as the firm's managing partner took the stage to introduce the keynote speaker. It is my great pleasure to introduce our partner and colleague, Dr. Maxwell Bennett, he announced. Dr. Bennett's groundbreaking research on organizational psychology has transformed our approach to leadership development. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage. Applause filled the room as Maxwell walked confidently to the podium. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, every inch the successful consultant. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded room, and I saw a flicker of surprise register on his face. Thank you, he began, his voice steady as the applause died down. I'm honored to be speaking to you today about a subject that's deeply important to me: authenticity in leadership. I felt my breath catch. Was he actually going to do it? Before I begin my prepared remarks, Maxwell continued, I want to share a personal reflection. In recent days, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to lead with integrity. The room was silent, attendees leaning forward slightly, perhaps sensing something unscripted was happening. We often present ourselves as we wish to be seen rather than as we truly are, he said. We curate our professional identities, emphasizing strengths and hiding weaknesses. In the process, we sometimes lose sight of our authentic selves. Maxwell paused, taking a sip of water. I could see his hand trembling slightly. I stand before you today with an impressive title, Doctor. It opens doors, commands respect, suggests expertise. His eyes found mine again. But titles alone don't make a leader, the audience murmured in agreement, still unaware of where this was going. True leadership, Maxwell continued, requires honesty, with others and with ourselves. He took a deep breath, and I felt myself doing the same, which is why I need to tell you all something important. Maxwell's voice had grown quieter, forcing everyone to listen more intently. The doctoral degree listed in your programs, the PhD I've claimed for years, isn't what it appears to be. A confused silence fell over the room. Atlantic International University, where I allegedly earned my doctorate, is not an accredited institution. My dissertation was not properly reviewed by academic peers. My research was inadequate. Gasps and whispers erupted around the ballroom. On stage, the managing partner's face had gone pale. In plain terms, Maxwell said, his voice now firm and clear, I do not hold a legitimate PhD. I misrepresented my credentials to this firm, to our clients and to everyone in my professional life. The whispers grew louder. People were turning to each other in shock, some typing frantically on their phones. I sat motionless, hardly believing what I was witnessing. I could offer explanations about competitive pressure, about insecurity, about the emphasis our industry places on credentials. But the simple truth is that I lied, and in doing so, I betrayed the trust of everyone in this room. Maxwell looked directly at me now, his expression a complex mixture of resignation and relief. Someone I care about deeply recently reminded me about the importance of integrity, of aligning our public selves with our private truths. She had the courage to hold me accountable when no one else would. Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I don't know what consequences will follow this admission, Maxwell continued. But whatever happens, I know that living honestly from this moment forward is the only path I can take. He stepped back from the podium. I apologize to all of you, and especially to my colleagues at this firm who trusted me. You deserved better. As Maxwell walked off the stage, chaos erupted in the ballroom. The managing partner rushed to the microphone, announcing a brief recess while they sorted out this unexpected situation. Attendees stood up, phones pressed to ears, voices raised in confusion and outrage. I slipped out of the back door unnoticed, my heart pounding. In the lobby, I nearly collided with Maxwell, who was being escorted toward a service exit by two security personnel, the managing partner striding angrily beside them. Our eyes met one final time. No words were exchanged, but a silent understanding passed between us. He had made his choice, the right one finally, and now would face the consequences. Outside on the street, I took a deep breath of the cool autumn air. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Are you seeing this? It's already hitting Twitter. I didn't reply. Instead, I began walking away from the hotel, away from Maxwell and the chaos he had created, and that I had helped bring to light. I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet certainty that truth, however painful, was always the better path. 3 months passed. Autumn gave way to winter, and New York transformed into its holiday incarnation of twinkling lights and bustling shoppers. I hadn't spoken to Maxwell since the day of the conference. Though his public fall from grace had been impossible to ignore, his firm had immediately placed him on administrative leave, then quietly announced his resignation 2 weeks later. The story had been picked up by industry publications, then mainstream media. Prominent consultant admits to fake PhD. There had been a brief investigation, but without any criminal charges, misrepresenting academic credentials, while ethically reprehensible, wasn't technically illegal in New York State. I had declined all interview requests, including from Jason's newspaper, which had run a thorough exposé. I wanted no part of the public spectacle. This had never been about humiliating Maxwell, only about truth and accountability. On a crisp December morning, I was reviewing budget proposals in my office at the youth center when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "A Ms. Bennett?" I frowned, confused. "Bennett?" "She says she's Maxwell Bennett's mother." My stomach dropped. Yes, send her in." Eleanor Bennett entered my office with the same regal bearing I remembered from the disastrous engagement dinner. She wore an elegant camel coat and carried a Hermes handbag. Her expression was unreadable. "Mrs. Bennett," I said, standing to greet her. "This is unexpected. Please call me Eleanor," she replied, removing her gloves. "May I sit?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk, my mind racing. Why would Maxwell's mother seek me out after everything that had happened? "I'll be direct, Olivia," Eleanor said once seated. "I know you were behind Maxwell's confession at the conference." I stiffened. "Maxwell made his own choice." "After you discovered his secret and confronted him," she countered, but without the anger I'd expected. "Maxwell told us everything." I said nothing, waiting. "I'm not here to berate you," she continued, surprising me. "Quite the opposite, actually. I've come to thank you." Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for this conversation, gratitude had not been among them. "Thank me?" I echoed. Eleanor nodded. "What my son did was wrong. Profoundly wrong. He betrayed his professional ethics and everyone who trusted him, including you." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. "I also owe you an apology for that dreadful dinner. The way I treated you was inexcusable." "I appreciate that," I said carefully, still not entirely trusting her motives. "The irony isn't lost on me," she said with a sad smile. "We looked down on you for your lack of formal education while celebrating Maxwell's fraudulent credentials." "It's humbling, to say the least. How is Maxwell?" I found myself asking despite my better judgment. "Rebuilding," Eleanor replied. "He's moved back to Philadelphia, near his old undergraduate college. He's working at a small community outreach program, ironically enough." She glanced pointedly around my office. No prestigious title, no corner office, but honest work. The image was difficult to reconcile with the ambitious, status-conscious Maxwell I had known. "He asked me to give you this," Eleanor said, removing an envelope from her handbag and placing it on my desk. "He wanted to deliver it himself, but felt you might not want to see him." I stared at the envelope, my name written in Maxwell's distinctive handwriting. "I should go," Eleanor said, rising gracefully. "The foundation I chair is having its annual meeting tonight." She paused at the door. "Whatever was between you and Maxwell is over, I understand that. But I hope you know that your actions, while painful for our family in the short term, were ultimately right." After she left, I sat for a long time looking at the sealed envelope before finally opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter, 2 pages long, and a small newspaper clipping. I read the letter first. "Dear Olivia, words seem inadequate after everything that's happened, but I'll try anyway. First, thank you. Not for exposing me, though that needed to happen, but for giving me the choice to expose myself. That distinction matters more than you might imagine. Second, I'm sorry. For the lies, yes, but especially for how I treated you. You were never less than me because of your educational background. If anything, your honest path shows far more integrity and strength than my fraudulent one ever did. I've been doing a lot of reflection these past months about why I felt the need to fabricate credentials in the first place. The easy answer is ambition. The PhD opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. But the harder truth is insecurity. I never felt I was enough as I was. The irony, of course, is that in trying to appear more accomplished, I became less of the person I wanted to be. I don't expect forgiveness, nor am I asking to be part of your life again. But I wanted you to know that what happened has changed me fundamentally. I'm trying to build something authentic now, however modest it might be compared to my former life. The enclosed article might interest you. It's what I'm doing these days. No doctor before my name, just honest work with people who need help. You once told me you never felt uneducated or insufficient until I made you feel that way. I hope you know now beyond any doubt that the insufficiency was entirely mine. Be well, Olivia. You deserve every happiness. Maxwell. I set the letter down and picked up the newspaper clipping. It was from a small Philadelphia community paper, showing Maxwell with a group of adult students in what looked like a GED preparation class. The caption read, "Local program helps adults complete education credentials." Coordinator Bennett emphasizes, "It's never too late to pursue honest achievement." I folded the clipping and letter carefully and placed them back in the envelope. Outside my window, snow had begun to fall, dusting the city with white. Spring arrived in New York with its usual tentative optimism, crocuses pushing through soil in Central Park, trees budding along the avenues, people shedding winter coats for lighter jackets. Life had settled into a new normal for me. The youth center was thriving, having secured a major grant that would fund our programs for the next 3 years. I'd moved into a small but sunny apartment in Astoria, filling it with plants and books. On weekends, I'd started taking classes at QNE, picking up where I'd left off years ago when my mother's illness had interrupted my education. The Maxwell chapter of my life felt closed. Though not forgotten, his letter remained in my desk drawer, read only once but somehow important to keep. Occasionally I'd spot his name in professional journals or education publications, smaller venues than his previous platforms, but with articles focused on adult education and second chances. He'd made a genuine transition, it seemed. On a bright Saturday in April, I was setting up for our center's annual community fair, tables spread across the playground, volunteers arranging displays, the smell of food from local vendors filling the air. The event showcased our students' achievements and connected families with resources, while raising funds and awareness for our programs. I was adjusting a banner when a familiar voice spoke behind me. "Need a hand with that?" I turned to find Daniel Reyes smiling at me. Daniel was an engineering professor at City College who had been volunteering at our center for the past few months, teaching robotics to our teens. He was tall and lean, with intelligent eyes and an easy manner that the kids responded to immediately. "Thanks," I said, handing him one end of the banner. "I'm about 2 inches too short for this job," he chuckled, securing his end to the pole. "Structural problem. We should redesign these poles to be adjustable." "Of course you'd say that, Professor," I teased. "Everything's an engineering problem to you." We'd developed an easy friendship over the past months. He'd asked me to coffee twice, but I'd deflected, not yet ready for anything that might lead to romance. "How are your classes going?" he asked as we finished with the banner. "Good," I replied. I aced my psychology midterm. Turns out I remember more from sophomore year than I thought. No surprise there. His warm brown eyes held mine. "You're one of the most capable people I've ever met, Olivia." The compliment made me pause. Not because it was particularly profound, but because of how it made me feel. Appreciated for exactly who I was. No embellishment necessary. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot. Around us, the fair was coming to life. Teenagers guided younger children through science demonstrations. Parents chatted with educators. A community that I'd helped build brick by brick, with no credentials beyond hard work and genuine care. "So," Daniel said, helping me arrange chairs. "I'm giving a talk at the museum next weekend about engineering in everyday life. Very accessible, I promise. Would you like to come? We could grab dinner after." I looked at him, really looked at him. Daniel was intelligent without being pretentious, accomplished without needing to prove it constantly. His PhD was real. I'd seen his faculty page, a habit I couldn't quite break. But it wasn't his defining characteristic. In that moment, I realized I'd been holding part of myself back, afraid of being hurt again, afraid of misjudging someone's character. "I'd like that," I said. His smile widened. "Great. It's a date then." As he walked away to help with another display, Zoe appeared at my side, eyebrows raised suggestively. "Professor Hottie finally broke through your defenses?" I laughed. "We're just going to a lecture and dinner." "Mm-hmm." She nudged my shoulder. For what it's worth, I approve. He looks at you like you're fascinating, not like you're a project. The distinction resonated with me. With Maxwell, I'd always felt I needed to improve, to rise to his level. With Daniel, I simply felt like myself, and that seemed to be exactly what he appreciated. Later that afternoon, as the fair reached its peak, I found myself on the small stage we'd set up, microphone in hand, addressing the gathered community. "Thank you all for coming today," I began. "When I look around at what we've built together, students, parents, educators, neighbors, I'm reminded that education isn't just about degrees or credentials. The irony of this statement, given my history with Maxwell, wasn't lost on me. True education happens when we share knowledge freely, when we lift each other up, when we recognize that learning is a lifelong journey with many valid paths." I gestured to the bustling fair around us. "What you see today represents all of us, our collective wisdom, our shared commitment to growth." From the crowd, Daniel caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Beside him, some of our teenage students were beaming with pride at their displays. "So whether you're completing a GED, pursuing college, learning a trade, or simply exploring a new interest," I continued, "you belong here. Your journey matters, and we're honored to be part of it." The applause that followed felt like an affirmation, not just of my words, but of the authentic path I'd chosen. After the fair wound down and most people had left, I sat alone on a bench in the playground, watching the sunset paint the buildings gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Great speech today. Looking forward to next weekend." I smiled and typed a reply, feeling a quiet optimism I hadn't experienced in a long time. The journey that had begun with humiliation at an engagement dinner had led me here, not just surviving after betrayal, but thriving in my own truth. Maxwell had his path to redemption, and I had mine. Neither was perfect, but both were authentic now. I gathered my things and headed home through the soft spring evening, planning my week ahead. Classes on Tuesday and Thursday, center programs to oversee, and yes, a date with a kind, intelligent man who saw me clearly and liked what he saw. No pretense, no facade, just the honest unfolding of whatever might come next.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.